In this episode of the Locked On NBA Big Board podcast, Richard Stayman and we are going to discuss probably the hottest prospect in college basketball. It is Tennessee's Dalton Knecht, who has absolutely been on fire the last 4 games. So we're going to get Richard's thoughts on Dalton Knecht, where he stands as an NBA prospect, maybe best fits, and maybe some concerns. So stay tuned for this episode of the Locked On NBA Big Board podcast, which is all about Dalton Knecht. Big shout out to each and every person that has made the Locked On NBA Big Board podcast your first listen of the day. I'm your host, Rafael Barlowe, the director of scouting for NBA Big Board, and my co-host for today is Mr. Mavs Draft, Richard Stayman. You all know Richard, the clip god. He's been here since day one, since we got started. But before we get into this episode, I want to let you know that it is brought to you by LinkedIn. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to and faster. So post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnba. That is linkedin.com/lockedonnba to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. All right. Dalton Knecht. What were your initial thoughts on him coming into this season, and has he exceeded expectations?
Easily exceeded expectations. I liked him, having seen him at Northern Colorado. I thought he was somebody that was really interesting. I wasn't sure how he'd translate up right away at Tennessee. I thought that was an interesting, it's a huge jump going from the Big Sky all the way to the SEC and being one of the top teams. He's been the best player on the team. He's the top 5 team that is able to, I think it's top 5 with the new rankings. The new rankings have thrown me off. I know they're number 6 and Duke lost. So I think he's just really exceeded expectations from the get-go, even at the Michigan State exhibition in October. I thought he really looked good, and everything has translated into the season. I mean, we've seen him drop, I think, 39 points, 38 points against Georgia. Florida had a big game against Georgia, has just really looked the part of a top SEC wing. And you would never, if you just said, hey, he's a 4-year guy, you never look at where his background is, going from Northern Colorado, and I believe he was at JUCO even before that.
Late bloomer,
like work ethic.
He was small, had a late growth spurt, which I think is, once you know that, then you kind of understand that, okay, there's still some upside there. Usually if it's a guy that's a 4-year guy that's a little older, there's big concerns about the upside, but I still think there is some room for the upside. I'm going to give some stats out for the listeners. Knecht is averaging 18.8 points per game on 48, 40, 83 shooting splits. But in his last 4 games, he's averaging 32 points per game. And these aren't against directional schools. This is an SEC play against Florida, Georgia, Mississippi State, and Alabama. I watched the Alabama game this weekend, and he was like a man amongst boys. I mean, he can shoot the ball. He shoots off movement. He's a good athlete. He's finishing well at the rim. Some other stats I have for you. He's shooting 42% on catch and shoot jumpers, and he's also shooting 59% at the rim. And it was at 60%. Just went down the point before the Alabama game this weekend. But he is shooting the ball from mid-range. He's shooting off the catch. He's shooting it from deep. I don't even want to call him a sneaky athlete, because if you call him sneaky, it's because you didn't think he was a good athlete because he's white. But he is a bouncy athlete. It really caught my attention during the exhibition game against Michigan State. He had a nice poster. Do you have any concerns? I mean, like, he's shooting the ball. He has good size, athleticism. We talked about his age, that it shouldn't be held against him. But do you have any concerns?
I mean, his defense is kind of mediocre at best. He gets blown by pretty easily on the perimeter, and I'm a big proponent of, on defense, you should make yourself as big as possible. Extending your arms out, up and out, being able to really just play big. He doesn't do that so much, so I do wonder how he's going to guard NBA talent at the next level. but he's going to make up for it with his shooting and just overall shot making.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, he's a shot maker. You hit it the nail right on the head. He's not just a shooter. He is someone that I feel comfortable giving the ball to in late shot clock situations and knowing that he is going to create. Here's a question for you. And I had this conversation with my brother this weekend. He says he likes Knecht, but he's like, he just doesn't pass the ball. Is that something that you've noticed also?
Yes, because he doesn't have a ton of assists. Like it is one of the things you notice. Like when he's driving, he's not driving and kicking. It's drive and try and get to the free throw line, get around defenders, whatever it is. It's not a ton of creativity in the playmaking department for sure. But I think a lot of his shots just come in such of the flow of the offense where it's, he's coming around a screen and he has the open shot. Doesn't need to pass. I think he's capable of doing it. Again, nothing really high level, but enough to make an extra pass and be able to, just swing the ball around the perimeter as needed and get the right shot.
Yeah, I have him rising up my big board, which was just released today on Monday. It took me a long time to complete it because I did a video breakdown of the offensive strengths for each player. And I have Knecht at number 20 on my big board. I didn't have him in the first 30 until about about 2 weeks ago. I know he had the huge game against North Carolina, and then he sprained his ankle like the last few minutes of the game. And it seemed like the ankle injury kind of limited him a little bit after that. But he's back. He's on fire. He's playing better right now in SEC play over the last 4 games. So you can say he played at Northern Colorado in a sense. I mean, he was a big-time scorer in Northern Colorado, but these numbers that he's put up, it's like 128 points or something like that the last 4 games. I'm not good at math, but I know it's like 32 points per game. So he's really been impressive. He's moving up. I'm not going to hold the age. On one hand, I'm not holding the age against him, but then on the other hand, if he were like 19, he'd probably be considered as the number 1 pick in the draft in a sense. Yeah. So I guess on one hand, I am. Like, outside of his defense, do you have any other concerns about like how he would fit in the NBA or like? I mean, I had someone say he could be Chris Duarte, a guy that puts up strong numbers because he's older than the guys, and it may even out once he gets to the NBA. Is that a concern for you?
I think what's going to have to make him separate himself from being a Chris Duarte is Chris Duarte was good his rookie year, but never got better. And, not everyone, sometimes it's work ethic can't get you past that hump, but sometimes it really can. I don't know what the issue was exactly for Duarte regressing, but I feel like with Knecht, one, he's bigger. I think he plays the true wing, whereas Duarte was a combo guard that was assigned to the wing in the NBA, and I think that's been a tough adjustment, whereas Knecht is just a 1-to-1. It just goes right back up. And I think that's going to do wonders for him. Is just having a clean jump to the NBA.
That's fair. That makes sense. All right. When we return, we're going to talk about where Richard has him on his big board, maybe some teams that he thinks would be a good fit, also his draft range. But before we get into that, let's talk about LinkedIn. Because at the start of the new year, every small business owner is asking the same questions. What's the one move that I can make that'll take my business to the next level? I know for me, it's what's the next move I can make to take this podcast and my newsletter to the next level. And LinkedIn Job knows that your success all depends on the team you surround yourself with. That's why LinkedIn Jobs has created the tools to help find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. And LinkedIn is not just another job board. It has a vast network of more than 1 billion professionals, which makes it the best place to hire. Hiring is easy when you have that many quality candidates. So easy in the fact that 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. And that's why businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs number 1 in delivering quality hires versus the leading competitors. And LinkedIn also knows that small businesses are wearing so many hats and may not have the time or resources to hire. But thankfully, with LinkedIn, the process is intuitive, quick, and easy. So post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNBA. That is linkedin.com/LOCKEDON NBA to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24 hours a day, covering the top sports stories of the day with local experts from the Locked On Network, plus the national shows that cover every league. So go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. All right, when we left off, I teased about where Richard has Knecht ranked on his big board. If you have your big board out yet, if not, what is a draft range that you believe is suitable for Knecht? Because I have him at number 20. I think he solidified himself as a first round pick. Where do you have him at on yours?
Yeah, so I've actually held back on doing a big board just because I feel like it's changing too much. Like if I post it the next day, it's going to be drastically different. I'll probably do something maybe the All-Star break and then draft time. I'm kind of more private on it this year just because, again, just so many changes. But where I have him currently is 15. I think this year I'm really prioritizing the floor of guys who I know are going to make the second contract in the Dalton Knecht is one of those guys. Again, just clean translation up to the NBA. I mean, he already translated perfectly, almost 1-to-1 statistically from Northern Colorado to the SEC. I feel like he's going to be able to do that again with way tougher experience under his belt, plus his age. So I have him in my top 15. I think he's somebody that is just going to be a day one guy, especially if he goes to the right team. Like just looking at where we are on mock drafts right now, the 15th pick is Orlando, who is a team that badly needs shooting. He'd be a great fit there. Defense obviously is something that Orlando really prioritizes. They have to have two-way guys, but I do think he's somebody where the feel for the game, if you put him out there, I mean, they don't have perfect defenders everywhere. Cole Anthony, for example, has a lot of defensive shortcomings. They still play him a good amount. So I think he could be out there a lot.
They got Jalen Suggs, though, who's defending his tail off. Yeah, looking at the order for today, January 22nd, Orlando's at 15, Miami's at 16. I mean, Dalton Knecht, Miami Heat guy, that just sounds like it's a good match there.
Unfair.
You have the Toronto Raptors with the Pacers pick. I guess that's just obviously it's from the Pascal Siakam trade. They'd be at 17. The Atlanta Hawks at 18, the New York Knicks at 19. The Suns would be a really good fit there because I think there'd be a clear path to playing time. And you have the stars around him to where he just have to knock down open shots, but he can also create his own shot. And then you got the Pelicans, which I think they're going to have to make a move because they got too many guys that are in line for paydays. I think Trey Murphy is in for a big payday. Ingram's contract is coming up. And so they may be looking for a contributor that can come in right away and play for them because, I just think they're going to have to make a move. I've seen Herb Jones' name floated around as a possible trade candidate. So, yeah, I mean, it's funny because we're on the opposite ends of the spectrum as far as big boards. I never release big boards, but I figure the name of the podcast is NBA Big Board and the website is NBA Big Board. And I did mock drafts all last year and the year before, but I did my first. I did a big board. I mean, this one that, like you said, is changing. The one I did, I started off with the lottery picks. I just did picks 1 through 30. I have 80 guys right now that I mean, the list is growing. I have 80 guys that I have write-ups on, but the list is like 109 names deep. And then, like you said, it changes. So I started on it. I did the first lottery. I started on that probably like January 10th, and I think I got it up January 13th. And then I was working on 15 through 30 all last week. And then it just kept changing. And then the numbers would change. And like I'd state a case for this guy to have a bad game. And then it's like there's literally, I would say 30 guys that I think go anywhere between 15 through 45. I think it's wide open. Then you have the guys like we talked about them. Me and my brother did Keyshawn George, guys like that are creeping up into that range. So it is tough and it is difficult. But Knecht is one of the steady names that I think should be a lock as the first rounder when everybody's bored. He's a lock on mine. So my question for you is this: with all the poor shooting outside of Chet, who's really in 2022, Jordan Hawkins, is there another name I'm missing? Jaquez, Brandon Miller shooting about 38% from three. Outside of the poor shooting from the class, outside of those guys, are you valuing shooting more this year?
I think yes and no. I think there's some guys who I valued as shooters last year that I thought would get immediate playing time, like Jett Howard, who just hasn't done it. Um, I think it's a skill that you have to have after about 20, because just looking at the current 3-point rankings of players who were picked past 20, I mean, Marcus Sasser and Nick Smith have decently legitimate sample size, and they're shooting really well. I think Nick Smith's is a little bit inflated because he doesn't play that many minutes, but Marcus Sasser's a real rotation guy, and he's at 41%. So I think there is some value. It depends, I think, more on the fit more than anything. Like, this is a year where I think the board is going to change a little bit, where we go, okay, we had him 15 on an undrafted board, but the second they get assigned to a team, if say Dalton Knecht goes to a team with like New Orleans, how does he find a way in the rotation? His value immediately drops when you're having to play in the wing rotation with, Brandon Ingram's the starter. You have Trey Murphy, who you have Herb Jones. There's going to be moves to be made with Herb Jones, and then also Jordan Hawkins. Like, that's kind of where I'm at, is the shooting and fit. It, for me, is going to make the boards almost become a like hindsight bias board, in a way where it's like, well, if I'd known they were going to be picked to this team, I wouldn't have ranked them this high, because the fit's just not good for right away.
I tweeted about it, and I thought, I'm big on fit, and I've been heavily criticized for doing mocks looking at fit. I think Jordan Hawkins in Detroit would make a lot of sense for that roster. I think he's a better fit than a Sore Thompson. Not saying that the Pistons made a mistake at number 5 with Thompson, but I just think it's an absolutely horrible fit, and I've said that from day one. And as far as fit, like you mentioned Orlando, they have a need for shooting, but let's say he does go to Orlando at 15. We're just speaking hypothetically. What does that mean for like Jett Howard? Because I think Knecht is a better shooter. I mean, he's obviously older, but I think he's a better shooter. I think he has more stuff to his game right now. I'm not saying that he's a better long-term prospect.
Yeah, that's where I was about to say that's the difference. Is Dalton Knecht's coming in day one, he's a rotation player. Jett Howard, there was always going to be, his decision-making was terrible at Michigan. He was a guy who, when he got the ball and it was a decision of, do I shoot or dribble? And you have to make that quick decision off the screen. A lot of times he made the wrong decision. And that's the stuff they're trying to work on him with. It has gotten a little bit better just watching some of the, I think it's not the Osceola Magic, their new G League team.
Yeah.
Just watching some of them, it's gotten a little bit better. And then when he's gotten in garbage time, same thing. I think they enter almost on an equal plane. I know the vision is to have him be a rotation player by the end of the year, or at the start of next season, like if he's not, he's behind the curve. So it gets tough, but at the same time, I just kind of look at it. I think they can coexist. Defensively, it's going to be tough. That is where a problem occurs, but Gary Harris isn't necessarily in their long-term vision. He's been hurt. Dalton Knecht could easily just come in and replace him. So I think that is something where there's ways to work around it. I don't think it'll be an either or, but if it had to be that way, I think there are ways to kind of make it work.
All right. When we return, I want to put Richard on the hot seat here. I'm going to ask him if he has a player comparison for Dalton Knecht. And then I'm also going to see if there's any way that Knecht could rise up into the lottery. I mean, this draft class is wide open. I've talked to so many agents who are like, this class is open. My guy could be a lottery pick. So I'm going to see if Richard believes there is a chance Knecht could enter the lottery. But before that, I want to talk to you about BetterHelp, because this episode is brought to you by BetterHelp. And I have a question for the audience. What are some things that you want to keep the same about yourself in 2024? What's an area that you feel like you're absolutely crushing it, and this is the opposite of new year, new you? Well, around New Year's, a lot of people get obsessed with how to change how they are instead of just expanding on what they're already doing good. And maybe you finally organize your space. Maybe you want to tackle another. Maybe you want to get up early in the morning and work out. Maybe you want to be more consistent in taking supplements. Maybe you want to eat breakfast in the morning. Therapy helps you find your strengths, and it actually helps you ditch some of the extreme resolutions and make changes that really stick. So if you are thinking about starting therapy, you have to give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online. It is designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited for your schedule. All you have to do is just fill out a questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist, and you can switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. So celebrate the progress that you've made. Celebrate you, and visit betterhelp.com/lockedonnba today. And you can get 10% off your first month. That is betterhelp.com/lockedonnba. All right. The NFL season is wrapping up. There's only a couple weeks left. We got the AFC NFC championship game coming up this weekend, and then there's the Super Bowl, and it is still enough time for you to get in on the action with FanDuel, which is America's #1 sports book. And right now, if you are a new customer, you get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. All you have to do is place a $5 bet. That's $150 in bonus bets to win or lose. And the app is super easy to use. There's so many different ways to bet. You have same game parlays. You can find bets in the new Explore tab. You can make a parlay in the Parlay Hub, which is the best way to find out about popular parlays and more. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make your first bet a layup. FanDuel, the official partner of the NFL and Locked On. All right, going to put Richard on the hot seat here. Do you have a comparison? Do you have a player comparison for Dalton Knecht? Because I've seen some wild ones, and they're all like white guys.
Yeah. I admittedly have one white guy, but I think he's actually the biggest stretch of all of them. I'm curious who the craziest one you've seen though before I give you mine is. Hopefully it's not one. I have 4 names that he's a little bit reminds me of.
I've seen JJ Redick. JJ Redick.
No.
And it's like, all right, he's white, he can shoot. Dalton is more athletic than JJ. He handles the ball. Like they're playing him in pick and rolls, like on ball screens. But yeah, that was one. It was another one that I
let me guess, Duncan
saw.
Robinson.
I didn't see that one. But yeah, the JJ Redick one, and I'm like, okay, maybe the person just saw clips of him coming off screens and knocking down shots. But if you've seen the whole game, you know that. Not saying he's going to be as good as JJ Redick or have as long as a career, but he has more. He has more tools in his toolbox than JJ.
Yeah, that's a bad comp.
And more athletic.
Yeah, so the white guy I was going to say that I'll start with him that I thought there's a little bit of shades of, and it's actually not like 1-to-1 too much. It's more of the impact and the role overlap currently. And this is actually the guy who I think could be the least similar of the 4 is Sam Hauser in Boston right now, where he comes off the bench, hits clutch shots. He doesn't make the team worse at all. And usually he's actually leaving the floor better than when he entered it. He's one of the more positive players off the bench, if I'm not mistaken. So something like that's one guy. I have a few other names, but they're all a little bit of blend. I thought the coming off the screen, I actually thought of someone else that's in the NBA right now, and that's not necessarily the degree of difficult shots, but just the same kind of role of, hey, just hit these tough shots. You're going to be getting a lot of 3-point shots, and he's able to attack closeouts a little bit, is Isaiah Joe. I thought that's probably one of the higher end shooting outcomes, if not the highest. So I think that's an interesting one too.
Yeah, I think he has more shot creativity than Isaiah Joe. I mean, Joe is definitely a specialist. Now that I think about, I don't know if I've seen Isaiah Joe make a basket inside the 3-point line.
I have a few times. He cuts and he has like one slashing move where he can. It's like a simple almost Euro, but it's not a Euro gather step, and it's like simple. That's it. If it's one man and he's off balance, he can do it. He's not going to ISO and drive to the basket. That's for sure. That's again just kind of the off the screen, not the exact same difficulty, but where it's look, you give him less than 2 dribbles coming off of screens, probably 1 dribble, he'll probably do some work.
Yeah, I mean, Connect is a 3-level scorer
Yeah,
on the college level. And
which
it's like, I mean, it's good at whether it's the mid range, shooting the three. I mean, he's efficient at all levels. And
yep,
when I did my big board, when I added the videos, I feel like it gives me a even more of appreciation for all the prospects and even like Connect because I'm trying to put together this video of offensive strengths. And when I'm uploading like every clip that they have for the season, I'm like literally watching and picking up stuff that I may not have picked up in my original notes. And for him, I think he's the best 3-level scorer in this draft. I would say AJ Mitchell is close, but he doesn't attempt enough from. I mean, he's efficient. He's shooting like 40% from three, but it's a small sample size. He's thinking more so get downhill first, get downhill, get downhill. While I think with Connect, there's like a pretty even balance of driving to the rim, pull ups, and shooting threes. I mean, Wooga Popular is a 3-level
yeah, I
scorer.
was thinking of him too.
But he's doing better driving to the rim. But I think you would say driving to the rim is like the last thing that he's looking to do out of the three. But Connect, like I said, I think he's done a good job of spreading out his scoring on 3 levels.
And that was actually so I had 2 other guys, and this is why I think these are my 2 favorite comps for him, is they do the same things, or one of them doesn't play anymore. But like Dalton's post game, I don't know if you've been a fan of, I know you kind of like some of that post stuff. There are 2 guys that I thought of that
Yeah.
had good post games back in the day. Now the one that plays still doesn't do that as much, and that's Harrison Barnes. I don't think he necessarily has as high of a ceiling as Barnes both did and reached, but I think if you look at what he is now, which is kind of actually he's regressed. I think that's one. And then Aaron Aflalo from back in the day, who was you put him off a screen. Obviously, this is different NBA now, like when I'm
Yeah.
about to say this, but you put him off a screen on the mid range. I remember him doing this in Orlando a lot, where he would just get the ISO and be able to take you back to the basket, go around the screen, keep driving, or just step back and go to the 3-point line. Like I think there's a lot of both of those guys in his game.
And that's what I like about Connect. I like the post game. I like that if you put a smaller defender on him, he's going to bring something different. Like, of course, he can get to the rack. He's been getting to the rack off screens. He's been ball screens, I should say. He's been draining threes, coming off action plays and pin downs. He's been able to shoot the pull up over bigs that are retreating, who are trying to stop him from going to the rim. But if you put a smaller guard on him, he's going to back them down and he's going to shoot. He's going to shoot over the top of them. So I love the fact that he's an aggressive scorer, and according to my brother, he's too aggressive because he doesn't pass. But he's an aggressive scorer. He's competitive, and I think he's going to be a player that is going to make an impact as a rookie. I'm saying it early. I'm a year ahead, but I think he is going to be a first team all rookie guy just because he's going to be prepared. He has the experience, not NBA experience, but he's a little bit older. There are going to be guys that are selected ahead of him who are not ready to come in and contribute. And I do think that he could end up in a Jaime Jaquez situation where he goes to a team that needs some scoring off the bench. And if he goes to a playoff team, they're always in need. They're always in need of a floor spacer, a guy that can complement their star. So I think he's going to be one of the more safer picks in this draft.
Yeah, I'm the exact same boat. I think he's one of the guys where you look at just the floor and he's got it. In a draft where there's not anything guaranteed, both at the top, middle, and bottom, why not take someone who at least is somewhere in that mix of top and middle? Or I guess, yeah, just purely middle at this point of the draft, where he has the safe skill to rely on. He has an age where he can come in right away. He's experienced enough to contribute year one. Why not just rank him a little bit higher if you know he's going to get a second contract? Like that alone is a separator in most of the top 20s, I think, that I've seen, or excuse me, most of the drafts, you're a top 20 player if you get a second contract. Like that's a lock. So I think Dalton Knecht's one of those guys.
Yeah, that's been one of the main themes I've heard from different agents is Can my guy get a second contract? I think he's a second contract guy, and everybody feels like their player is a first round candidate because this draft is so wide open. Well, that wraps up this episode of the Locked On NBA Big Board Podcast. Once again, thank you for making the Locked On NBA Big Board Podcast your first listen of the day. If you're not subscribed, please subscribe, like, share, comment, hit the notification bell. The podcast is growing. I think we've been over like 100-something subscribers in the last week or so. So big shout out to all the new subscribers that are watching on YouTube, and also the new subscribers that are listening on the podcast. Once again, it's Rafael Barlowe with Richard Stayman, and we are out.